Welcome back, everybody, to Niners Now. I'm your host, Brady Grustas, at GrustasBrady on X. You can follow me there. And today we are checking the stock report for the 49ers. Who had a great week one and who struggled? Who's trending up and who's trending down? And of course, stick around until later in the show because we may be watching a quarterback make his 49ers debut on Sunday. But before we begin, go ahead and subscribe down below, leave a like, leave a comment, and let's get into it. So let's start with the guys who really did not impress me much on Sunday. And I think we first have to talk about the rookie cornerback, Upton Stout. Now, Stout had a lot of question marks coming out of college, with the biggest one being his size. He's currently listed on the 49ers website at 5'9", and that's very short for an NFL player. And at least early in his career, that does mean he's only going to play in the slot. But during the summer, Stout was the fastest riser of anyone on the 49ers. He was arguably the top story of all of training camp with his high-energy, physical play style. Stout quickly earned a starting role as the nickel cornerback. He was competitive and feisty all summer and was a real rising player to watch heading into the regular season. But he injured his calf right before the first preseason game, and as a result, he was held out for the entire preseason. And because of that, his first ever NFL game action came in week one against Jackson Smith-Njigba. So it didn't go great, which we expected, right? Stout is still a really exciting player to me, and I'm really confident in his ability to turn it around. But given the hype that he was carrying from camp, and given how good JSN was in Seattle, week one was definitely a humbling experience. I expect Stout to bounce back, though, and really deliver eventually this season. But for now, I think we have to admit, the Upton Stout stock is a little bit down. Now, another guy that I want to highlight here is offensive lineman Ben Bartch. Bartch is a pretty big question mark as well. He played 70 snaps last season in relief of Aaron Banks before getting hurt. And for context, Bartch played 81 snaps on Sunday in a single game. So his sample size last year was truly so small, but in that minuscule sample size, he did play quite well. So the 49ers brought him back for cheap, and he earned the starting left guard spot. Many 49ers fans hoped that this small sample size would translate into a solid full-time starter and potentially even an upgrade over Aaron Banks at that position. And in week one, Bartch was fine, I guess. He was a good run blocker and struggled in pass protection. He wasn't especially good or bad at anything, though. He wasn't dominant, and he wasn't game-breakingly bad, right? He was just kind of fine. So the reason that I've got Bartch on the stock down list is not as much because of his play, but his availability. Once again, Bartch is now day-to-day, this time with a knee sprain. Bartch played through the injury on Sunday, which is admirable, but his season ended early last year thanks to an elbow, I believe, and he missed some time this summer with an elbow as well. You may have to fact-check me on last year's injury, but I know that he suffered an elbow injury this summer. If Bartch can't stay on the field, he just can't be a 49er. At least not one that they can count on, right? Younger, cheaper, and healthier. That has been the motto all year long, and Bartch is notably not healthy right now. We'll see if Bartch can go in week two. They could certainly use him out there, and I believe he was limited in practice on Wednesday, but for now, with the knee sprain, I think his stock is definitely down. Now, the last guy on my stock down list here is the most surprising one to me. It's Trent Williams. Trent really struggled against Seattle, giving up pressure on over 15% of his pass sets. That is a shockingly high number for one of the best players on the team. And this could be for a whole host of reasons, right? He did not play at all in the preseason and was practicing sparingly during training camp in an effort to keep him healthy. So it is very plausible that he was coming into the game with a lot of rust, right? That could be a reason why he struggled. He also did get banged up early in the game. There was a timeout as he walked off the field. Trent did come back in and keep playing, but there's a good chance that whatever was bothering him did have an impact on his play and severely decreased his level of excellence. And of course, there is the worst case scenario, right? Which is that Trent has finally hit the wall and he is just not as good of a player anymore. He's just too old to be as good as he used to be. And then on top of it all is the fact that the Seahawks have a very talented defensive line with guys like Boye Mafe, DeMarcus Lawrence, Derek Hall, Leonard Williams, all very good and talented players. I think that the reason that Trent was this bad in week 1 is probably a mix of all of these factors, if we're being completely honest. I think the way that he plays in week 2 is really going to shed a little bit more light here. It'll increase the sample size and let us know how much of an issue this is really going to be this season. I will say, though, watching him get beat in Seattle was a pretty sobering reminder that the Niners are going to need a new left tackle very soon, maybe as soon as this offseason. Luckily, the Niners were able to re-sign their right tackle, Colton McKivitz, so they'll only need a left tackle, but Trent is definitely a guy whose stock dropped after week 1. But it wasn't all doom and gloom, right? There were plenty of 49ers who I thought really showed up ready to dominate in week 1. And the first guy that I want to shout out is defensive tackle Kalia Davis. Now, Davis has been a bench warmer for nearly his entire NFL career, but this year is a golden opportunity for him as he is the starter at defensive tackle. And in week 1, Davis looked ready for that opportunity. He's always been explosive. He was a former middle linebacker who converted to defensive tackle in college, and he was drafted late after an ACL tear that really hurt his draft stock. But in week 1, we finally got to see Kalia Davis's explosiveness really translate to the NFL level. He looked quick off the ball, he looked decisive, and he was cutting through blocks like butter. He also looked pretty strong out there. He held the point of attack well, and he was able to pull off a few clean disengages. Now, he wasn't exactly, he wasn't a completely new man, right? He's not going to hold up great against double teams. That's never really been his game. But I did thought he handled the solo blocks well, and like I said, he looked very sharp disengaging from those blocks. I was super impressed. He looked like our clear best defensive tackle, and if he keeps playing this way, he's going to be in for a pretty big year. Davis is one of the team's X factors, and if the Niners want to keep winning games, they're going to need some more strong performances from Kalia Davis. Now, all summer long, we watched as 4 safeties battled it out, trying to earn 2 starting spots for this defense. Richie Grant ended up cut, Jair Brown was benched, and Jason Pinnock won the starting job next to my next candidate for the stock up list, rookie safety Marquise Siegel. Siegel had a very big play on the first drive of the game, and it really set the tone for the rest of the week for him. I believe it was the first third down that the Seahawks offense had. Nick Bosa ran a sweet stunt and came right at Darnold through the A-gap. Bosa laid him out, but Darnold was able to get the throw off to tight end A.J. Barner in the flat, who had Siegel all over him. Siegel contested the catch, but Barner's a pretty big dude. He was able to bring down the football anyways. But Siegel didn't give an inch. He dragged the tight end down for the third down stop and forced a Seahawks punt. That was a really great play, and right at the beginning of the game, too, made me feel very confident in Siegel going forward. Siegel did have one missed tackle that I noticed. He went low on the running back and wasn't able to bring him down. But other than that, I thought Siegel's tackling was honestly fantastic. He had this textbook run fit when he met Kenneth Walker in the hole, broke down, and wrapped up beautifully, absorbing all the contact and preventing any further yards for Kenneth Walker. That's Siegel's superpower to me, his ability to fit the run with his speed and lay a hit when he gets to the hole. And it's translating immediately in the NFL. One thing that I was kind of worried about with Siegel was the coverage, but he didn't give up any catches over the top, and I thought he did a pretty good job of keeping the offense in front of him, as did the entire 49ers defense, in all honesty. Siegel won this starting job decisively. He played 100% of snaps on defense with 52, while Jair Brown only played 2 defensive snaps. This job is definitely Siegel's to lose, and because of that, his stock is going up. Now, last but not least, we got to talk about the potential new star of the 49ers defense, D. Winters. Now, folks, the hype is real with Winters. This isn't some camp storyline that never really amounts to anything, okay? D. Winters has arrived. He was everywhere in week 1. He nearly had an interception off of Darnold that would have sealed the game in the fourth quarter. He was disruptive as a blitzer, and he was an absolute menace in the run game. He was slipping through blocks like an otter and meeting the running backs in the backfield for TFLs. Winters has had great speed ever since he came out of TCU. I was a huge D. Winters fan back in the 2023 draft. He was one of my favorite sleeper picks for really any position. And his ability to trigger and shoot downhill quickly, it was just unreal, man. He was so fast. His issue in the NFL so far has been what happens when he gets to that destination, right? He can get there very quick, but notably, he's been a pretty bad tackler in his NFL career. But on Sunday, he looked like a completely different player. He kept that speed that got him drafted, but now he's wrapping up consistently. He didn't miss a single tackle, and he had a couple of really impressive ones, including one in space where he wrapped up Kenneth Walker, secured his ankles, and saved a first down. I believe that play forced a Seattle punt as well. Winters is already a clear upgrade over Devondre Campbell, and while I don't think he's as good as prime Dre Greenlaw, he's a lot closer than many people thought he would be. Stock is definitely up for D. Winters. So we've got stock down for Upton Stout, Ben Barch, and Trent Williams, but stock up for Kalia Davis, Marquise Siegel, and D. Winters. Is there anybody I missed? Who were you impressed with, or who were you disappointed by in week 1? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, folks, we got our first practice reports for week 2 on Wednesday, and the Niners have a few DNPs, did not practice, if you weren't sure what that meant. Trent Williams, CMC, and Nick Bosa all got veteran rest days. Yetur Gross-Matos didn't practice with a knee issue. Now, I'm not sure if that's the same issue that kept him out for the most of the training camp, and they're just trying to be cautious with him as they work him back, or he might have tweaked something, and this could be a new injury. Not quite sure yet with YGM. And Jawan Jennings didn't practice with his shoulder injury. Luckily, though, Dom Pooney practiced in full after he had to leave Sunday's game for a snap or two. And Ben Barch and Jordan James were limited, so hopefully those guys are all right and able to play in week 2. And Jordan Watkins did not appear on the injury report, so he very well may make his 49ers debut this week. Very exciting for Watkins. But unfortunately, Brock Purdy was out with his shoulder and toe injuries, and Kyle Shanahan did say that Brock is officially a long shot to play in week 2, and that this toe injury might be a multiple week issue. That is terrible news, frankly. I've stood firm on my prediction that Mac Jones will not take this version of the 49ers to a victory against the Saints, and I'm going to wait to be proven wrong on Sunday. But potentially losing Brock for multiple weeks is much, much more dire than just the Saints game. With the way that this offensive line played in week 1 and the injured state of the receiving room, I just don't see how Mac will have any shot to impress on offense and win games. And let me be clear, I really hope I'm wrong about this. If the Niners can make it to 2-0 despite this nonsense and Brock is able to come back week 3 and play against the Cardinals, then I'll eat my words, gladly. But I think that this toe injury is potentially pretty serious, so we may have to get used to some Mac Jones hoops in the meantime. I do think Mac is a talented player, and I believe in his ability to run the offense and manage the game. He's not the best quarterback in the world, but he can make some layered throws over the middle, and he can get the ball out quick when he's playing on time. But I really, really worry about Mac's ability to handle pressure. I think the Niners are going to have to pass protect flawlessly in order to keep Mac on schedule and keep the offense rolling. And I don't know if the O-line is good enough to do that. I'm expecting the offense to look a lot like the Jimmy G days, in all honesty. A quarterback wearing number 10 with limited mobility, trying to just operate the system and manage the game. 49er fans might get some deja vu on Sunday. Do you trust Mac Jones to score enough points to win week 2? Let me know down below in the comments. Now, with the news of this Purdy injury potentially being a multi-week issue, Kyle Shanahan did say in his presser that he'd like to add a quarterback to the roster somewhere, as well as a tight end, thanks to George Kittle being on IR. But the 49ers have 0 spots open on the 53-man roster, so there's going to be some movement needed. Now, on Wednesday, the Niners signed tight end Messiah Swinson to the practice squad, which was an option we talked about on yesterday's show. Bringing in a practice squad tight end and using standard elevations is an easy way to keep the tight end numbers in a good spot without cutting anyone from the 53. But who is Messiah Swinson? Well, first of all, he's a huge dude. He's listed at 6'7", 259 pounds. Swinson was undrafted in 2024 coming out of Arizona State, where he had a pretty modest career. 28 catches, 317 yards, and 2 touchdowns in 2 years at ASU. He spent his NFL career so far on the practice squads of the Panthers and Packers. But looking at his profile and how he plays, Swinson is the archetype of tight end that we've seen Kyle Shanahan target before. I'm not sure how many of you will remember this guy, but way back in his Atlanta days, Kyle really liked to use this guy named Levine Toilolo, who was a reliable backup tight end, usually good for 200 yards and a touchdown or two every year. Drop a comment if you remember Levine Toilolo. Very much a naming random athletes type of guy. One of my favorite names to pull out from that 2010s period. Toilolo was also huge, right? 6'8", 268 pounds, around the same size as Swinson, if not a touch bigger. And Toilolo, funnily enough, actually spent the 2019 season with the 49ers as a backup tight end / blocking specialist behind George Kittle and Ross Dwelley. Now, neither Toilolo or Swinson are particularly fast or quick, but decent hands plus good route running equals a valuable skill set. Is Messiah going to save the 49ers? Unlikely, but I am interested in him as a potential developmental tight end. He's kind of like a budget version of Darnell Washington, who's a guy who I've wanted the 49ers to target for a long time, since he was coming out of Georgia. So Swinson fills the tight end hole and also fills the practice squad spot. And as for quarterback, the 49ers worked out journeyman veteran quarterback Mike White on Wednesday. White has spent some time with the Jets and the Dolphins before being the Bills' third-string quarterback last year. A true AFC East legend. White actually threw for over 2,000 yards in a 7-game stretch while he was with the Jets early in his career. And while he's not a spectacular player by any means, he is a guy who can play on time and locate his throws nicely. He's not as good as Mac Jones, in my opinion, but he's a competent backup who can run an offense, which makes him better than, the Carter Bradleys and Tanner Mordecais of the world. A true, third-string quarterback. However, with no room left on the 53 or the practice squad, someone will have to be cut if the 49ers want to bring in Mike White. And I think they should, in all honesty. Mac is the only healthy quarterback on the 53, and I do not want to rely on developmental project Adrian Martinez this early in the year. So do you think the 49ers should sign Mike White? Who would you cut to bring him in? Let me know in the comments down below. And of course, let me know below if you enjoyed. Leave a comment, leave a like, and let me know if there's any topics that you'd like to see me cover. We are getting closer and closer to the Saints game. I can't wait. We're going to have a Saints preview in tomorrow's episode. Thank you all for watching, and subscribe for 49ers videos 5 days a week. I'm Brady Grustas, at Grustas Brady on X. This has been Niners Now, and I'll see you tomorrow.